Ladies and gentlemen, we are back, I hope, for the 2021-2022 season previews. The best series on my channel in the entire history of it was the season previews for last year. Those did amazing. Almost all of them got over 100 views, which, with the low expectations I had back then, that was amazing. This year, however, we're not going alphabetical order. We're going in reverse alphabetical order, starting off with the Winnipeg Jets. First off, if you're new to the channel and you have not already subscribed, I would love if you would go make sure to do that, as we're trying to get to 900 subscribers by the start of next season. We should make it, right? We're only 10 away. It's not that hard. And, I mean, we're really getting close to the push to 1,000. We're actually getting really close. So I'm actually really excited for making content in regards to this and content during the season. So, it's going to be an exciting time. We have a lot of stuff coming up. This is going to be the first of two previews today. Tomorrow will be Vancouver and Vegas. Today is Winnipeg and Washington. But now, I won't waste any more of your time. Let's get into the preview. Now, if you were a fan of the channel last year, you would have known how I did this. Basically, what I went through was I reviewed their last season. I didn't go too in-depth with what I did in the 2021 reviews. I basically just reviewed their record, reviewed their playoffs, and then I reviewed their departures, arrivals, projected lineups, etc. Everything in that order. So, last season, the Winnipeg Jets in the Canadian division, they finished 30, 23, and 3 with 63 points. And they were 14th in the NHL. So, they were pretty good for a little bit there. They were doing well. They were second in their division at points. Of course, Edmonton did take that place. And, they were bouncing back and forth between second and third. And then they kind of pulled the New York Islanders and started falling off towards the end. I remember they were losing games dramatically, especially to the Oilers, ironically. So, obviously, it was a little bit concerning there, and it was looking like going against what looked like a powerhouse Oilers team. Obviously, just Connor McDavid, period. Like, Connor McDavid solo dub. It wasn't looking too good for them, but they beat my odds. I'm gonna bring this up. I brought this up a lot of times. Last year, in last year's playoffs, my bracket lasted to the end of the second round. This bracket lasted as soon as this series was over. So, they swept them. Yeah, they beat the Edmonton Oilers in 4 games. Now, 3 of those were in overtime, I think. And one of them was a dramatic Toronto Maple Leafs-like loss for the Oilers. So, you can take it what you will. And then they faced off against the Montreal Canadiens. And the big highlight of that series was Pierre-Luc Dubois. Dubois was just god-awful. Excuse me. He was not very good. They lost to Montreal in 4 games. It wasn't close in any of the games. Of course, they had the Mark Scheifele suspension, all that dramaticness. He will be suspended 1 game next season, by the way. So, that kind of stings a little bit. But, hey, when you make a hit like that on Jake Evans, it has to happen. So, not a good end to Winnipeg's season. And heading into this one, it's really different. So moving on in your key departures list for the Winnipeg Jets. Now, with every team, I'm going to mention who they lost to Seattle Kraken, except if you're Vegas, Columbus, or Washington, I think. They lost Mason Appleton to the Seattle Kraken. So a good, solid depth forward. He definitely will be missed. Trevor Lewis as well. I didn't really see him fitting in the lineup that much very well, so yeah. They lost a big backup in Laurent Brossoit, who I've been very fond of. I'm going to enjoy him in Vegas, backing up Robin Lehner. They also lost Tucker Pullman, who signed a big deal with Vancouver. They lost depth scorers Matthew Perrault and Nate Thompson, depth players who went to Montreal and Philadelphia, respectively. And they also lost Derek Forbort to free agency with Boston. So, you look at all these players, they aren't too big of names. I'd say the biggest loss out of all of those is probably Brossoit. You could argue Tucker Pullman. You could argue Mason Appleton. You can say what you want, but I think that Laurent Brossoit was a big loss. He didn't play too well this season, but I think he can be a solid backup for Vegas in the coming times. I just think his time was done in Winnipeg, and that sucks to say that, but it's gonna be weird not seeing him in a Jets jersey next season. Your key arrivals list for the Winnipeg Jets. We're gonna go more in depth with this later, but their key arrivals were Riley Nash, who came from Toronto. I don't know how I feel about that because Toronto gave up a lot to get Riley Nash, and he didn't really play that much because he was injured. So I guess he'll do okay in Winnipeg. I won't put a picture for these two guys here. Mikey Isimont. I might have butchered that so hard. Just a deaf AHL player. Luke Johnson came from Minnesota. And here is the big blue line additions. They acquired Brendan Dillon in a trade with the Washington Capitals earlier this offseason. And they acquired Nate Schmidt in a trade with the Vancouver Canucks earlier this offseason. And they also got Austin Pogonski through free agency. So, I want to go in depth with these blue liners. The biggest problem, and excluding Pierre-Luc Dubois and all that mess, Winnipeg's biggest problem was the blue line. That was a huge problem, and it's been a problem for a while. Ever since they lost Trouba, ever since they lost a lot of guys on that blue line. Bufflin had his own story too. Trouba was just traded. The blue line has not been as concrete. It's really just Josh Morrissey, who had a relatively down year by his standards, and as well as that Neil Pionk, who I think gets underrated. I thought his contract was an overpay, but now that I look at it, he's kind of underrated. There really isn't anyone. And I think that, Dillon and Schmidt, they aren't big name guys. They aren't like Dougie Hamilton or, other guys that were on the market. But they're going to be solid guys. I think Dillon will play probably second pairing minutes, maybe even first pairing at points this season. And I think Schmidt will probably be on the same level, maybe third pairing. And I've always been so high on Nate Schmidt. I think he can bounce back from a bad season in Vancouver. Generally, I don't really blame that on him, honestly. I mean, to a degree, I do. But Vancouver was just a mess last season. The Delta variant hit them. Everything else. It was just a whole mess. So I don't really blame that on Schmidt entirely. I am excited to see how he's going to do with this Jets team. But, it's really kind of a coin flip on how he does. So I'd say the key arrivals, they could have done more, obviously. But I think with what they pulled out, judging by what they lost, it isn't a terrible outcome coming back to them. And now we move on to my favorite thing to do in the entire world, projected lineups. So, what I did last year is I went through like left wing, center, right wing. We're not going to do that today or this year. We're going to do just top 6, bottom 6, and then extra guys. So, on your top 6, we're going to go left to right, left wing to right wing. You have Kyle Connor on the first line, Scheifele and Wheeler. Solid first line. Second line, you have Adam Lowry, Pierre-Luc Dubois, and Nikolai Ehlers. That is your top 6. You could put Ehlers up top, above Wheeler. I wouldn't complain, but since Wheeler's the captain, I kind of put him first in that list. But that is some good depth. Having Dubois down on the second line, I think is going to work out. Maybe he'll play first line at points this coming season, but honestly, I think that's what they're going to roll with. As for their bottom 6, their third line consists of Vesalainen, Paul Stastny, and Riley Nash being that new fill-in guy. Their fourth line is going to be Dominic Toninato, Andrew Kopp, and Jansen Harkins. Of course, that could change. I think they might need a little bit more depth when it comes to that, because having a guy like Toninato and having Vesalainen on your third line, I don't know how that's going to work out for them. But I do think Paul Stastny is going to look interesting because I've always liked Stastny. Always. I've always liked Stastny and Carl Dahlstrom. I remember when that trade with Vegas occurred, last year's free agency. I've always been high on those guys. So I'm excited to see how Stastny's going to do playing third line again. It wasn't terrible last year, but it could have been better. So, we'll see where they roll with that. As for the extras, I don't have anything on the wings. All I have is centers. Gustafsson and Cole Perfetti. Perfetti will most definitely get a chance this coming season. Absolutely. I could see him playing maybe even fourth line right out of the gate. Maybe they take Cop out of the picture and they put Perfetti in for a little bit, and see how he develops. Because Perfetti, he's not Caulfield, but he's going to be a good goal scorer. So we'll see where they go with that. As for the defense, we'll move on to the defense. The defense is a huge discussion. We'll go pairing to pairing. The first pairing I have is Morrissey and Schmidt, although I probably would move Pionk up to that top pairing. Then you have Brendan Dillon and Neil Pionk, obviously, on that second pairing. And then you have Nathan Billio and Dylan DeMello as your blue line there. And then you have Logan Stanley and Sami Niku and Ville Heinola as your fill-in guys on respective positions. So we'll go pairing. So Morrissey and Pionk. I know I have Schmidt up top there, but I would probably put Pionk now. I think that's solid. I think that is solid, but maybe you want to spread out your blue line. Maybe give Schmidt a chance on that top pairing and let him see how he does with Josh Morrissey. And if he does well, you keep it. If he doesn't do well, you move Pionk back up there and you see how Schmidt does with Brendan Dillon. So they have options here. And they're definitely going to give a guy like Logan Stanley the chance to rise up. He'll probably play third pairing right out of the gate, honestly. I wouldn't surprise that if he makes that out of training camp. Maybe he rises above Nathan Billio and, plays solid. Of course, Sami Niku, he hasn't lived up to potential, but I think that if he gets, onto a rhythm, he could get some of his old strengths back. So I think the defense looks good if everything goes right. But if it all falls apart, if Schmidt doesn't do well, if, Morrissey has another down year, this blue line could be what kills him. So obviously in the goaltending thing, you obviously have Connor Hellebuyck. You have Eric Comrie as your backup. It's a pretty good pairing. I like Comrie. I've always been high on Eric Comrie. Although I like Laurent Brossoit a lot better, I think Comrie can be a solid backup. I think this is the first opportunity, first real opportunity, unless someone rises up to the plate past him. But obviously Hellebuyck's going to play probably 60 of the games, and Comrie's going to play 20. So, obviously, I think that this is going to be a solid Jets team, honestly. I think that, the top six looks good. The bottom six, it's gonna have a little bit of work to get done, but I think that when I look at that roster, I think I like it. If the defense, as I said, everything goes right, it really could go in their favor, and they could go in their favor, hard. It could be really, really good for them. And obviously, Hellebuyck is going to be Hellebuyck, and Comrie, we'll see how he does with the backup role. And just honestly, just this Jets team right now, there may be a little bit of things need to get done, but honestly, it looks kind of exciting. So here's my final thing. Do they make the playoffs? Now, the Central Division is so competitive. Okay, you have Dallas, you have Chicago, you have Arizona. Psych, you really thought Arizona was going to make the playoffs? You have, why can't I think of teams? You have the Minnesota Wild. You have Blackhawks, Avalanche. You have other teams in the mix as well. The Blues. This division's probably one of the toughest. And I'm not going to compare it to the East, because the East, just about everyone's looking good, except for Columbus. Everyone in there is a playoff team, and if not, they're heading towards a playoff situation. So, I want to say they do. I don't think they'll win the division, because Colorado will probably take that role. But I think they could finish second, maybe third, maybe a wild card spot at the lowest. That could be something we see out of Winnipeg. And, basically I think I have them making the playoff. They should, unless everything falls apart. But right now it looks like they can. So thank y'all for watching. For our support on this first preview. A TikTok will be made about this, obviously. And, appreciate y'all coming out and watching this. And I will see you guys in the Washington Capitals preview later today. Adios.